Hey there, YouTube. This is Electrical Mechanical Guy, aka E&M Guy. Today, I'm just going to be showing you a replacement of a regular shutoff valve for a vanity. This is pretty simple. Don't need a plumber to do it. You can do it yourself. Very easy to do. Just takes a couple things for prep. One of the things that you should do is obviously shut off your water. So I turned off the water already, opened a valve and a faucet downstairs to make sure that the water drains out a little bit. One thing you can do is check to make sure you've got your valve up here drained. You can crack it a little bit. I've got a water bucket underneath, so if I crack this valve, you can hear it hissing a little bit, but there's no water coming out, so that's a good thing. So, to get started, we need a couple items. I've got a pipe wrench and an adjustable wrench. Pretty easy to use. This type of installation has threaded 1/2-inch pipe that's used. So right here, there's a 1/2-inch pipe, 1/2-inch diameter pipe that's sticking out of the wall that goes to the pipe behind. That's my supply here for hot and cold. So this is a threaded pipe. You can also find yourself attaching to copper, in which case you might have a threaded end soldered on your copper, or it could be a straight piece with no threads, in which case you wouldn't need a threaded valve, but you would need a compression valve. And those go on a little bit differently. This right here actually is a compression type valve connection. So if this were copper, you would have the threaded piece and you would have this little fitting that goes in there. And then you have your other piece that would screw onto your valve, and you would just put your pipe through here and tighten this down like so, and the compression of tightening this down would actually compress your copper supply pipe to your valve body. And you tighten that up, this little fitting here compresses a little bit, and it makes yourself a watertight seal. Now this here is set similarly for that type of connection, but this connection isn't from the wall to your shutoff valve. This connection is from your shutoff valve to your faucet. But right now, I'm replacing the entire valve. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to use a pipe wrench to hold this 1/2-inch pipe steady so that when I undo the valve, I don't actually unscrew the pipe that's going into the wall. That would be bad. So I need to hold that steady as I'm unscrewing my valve. So I'm just going to tighten up my pipe wrench on the pipe there, and I'm going to use my adjustable wrench, just grab onto the valve, lefty-loosey, and just work it off. And there we have it. That's it. Simple. So I'm threaded into this piece, and I'm threaded right here. So this white stuff around this pipe that's on the threads is referred to as several things: pipe dope, T-tape, Teflon tape, plumber's tape, various names. All does the same thing. That's a tape style. Comes in a roll like this. I'm going to replace it. You can also use a putty type for making your seal. It's also known as pipe dope, plumbers use, and that's a putty style. But in this case, I'm going to use tape. Now the reason I took that valve off is because I want to replace this old fitting flange with a new one, and this just has some protective cover on it. So I'm just going to push that on like so, and then I'm going to put my valve on after I put my Teflon tape back on. And I want to put this on so that it doesn't work its way off when I screw that fitting on. So I'm going to go righty-tighty with this. So to the right, because I'm going to screw on the fitting to the right. So I'm just going to wrap that a couple times, snap it off, and my fitting is going to turn to the right like this. So I wound that tape this way. If you wound the tape the other way, and then you put this fitting on, you're actually going to back that tape off. So I'm going to do the opposite now with my pipe wrench. I'm going to get this started as such, and just get that on snug. And then I'm going to make at least one more rotation of that to get that fitting for the supply to my faucet straight up. So again, not to jar this pipe loose and break the seal, I'm going to hold it in here, and then I'm just going to turn this to the right. And this doesn't have to be cranked down very tight. I mean, it does need to be snug, absolutely, but you don't need to over crank it. I'm just going to tighten it back up to its vertical position. And then what I will do is check this by slowly turning the water on and making sure that there are no leaks back here. One thing to make sure is before you go turn your water back on, make sure this valve is off, because that makes a real mess if you don't have that valve off. This is a ball valve in there, you see. If that valve is not off and you turn your water supply back on, guess what can happen here? You're going to flood your bathroom or whatever area you're working in. So you turn that off, it's closed, and it's off. This is a quarter turn valve. Very nice valve. Much easier to use and lasts pretty much forever. This is what it is right here. And these are only about $7, $8. Not much more expensive than one of these other valves. These other valves here that I can pull off on this one, these are not quarter turn valves. So I'm replacing these for a couple reasons, and mainly because it's not a quarter turn valve, and I want to replace those skirts, the covers for the hole there. And the reason I went with a quarter turn valve is, like I said, much easier to use, but they are also more reliable. And I'll show you that here in a second once I get this off. The reason they're more reliable is because the way these valves work is they use a screw mechanism on the inside, and as you turn it, which you probably can't see in there, as you turn it, there is a seat that you can see right down there in the middle, and a rubber gasket. And as this turns, it adjusts up and down in that space. And that's what actually shuts off your supply coming in through here. And if you notice, this is plastic in here. This piece in here that this handle's attached to. The problem with that is, as these age, and because most people don't ever turn these unless they need to turn off their water, which rarely happens, these tend to seize. They get old, the rubber gets old, and they either stick in the open position, or you really have to crank on it to get it closed, and it doesn't close all the way. I've had many of these that, even though I shut the water off here, and I disconnect my connection to my faucet, I still get water that bubbles out of this, which isn't a big deal. If you are doing a quick swap out of a hose and you have your hose with you, you put a bucket below, you can make a repair. But in my case, I ripped out a cabinet, I'm redoing the vanity, I'm redoing some plumbing. This is going to be off for weeks, maybe a month or two, and I don't want to have to empty a bucket because this keeps dripping every day or every few days. So the other thing is, as these age, and this plastic piece in here, as everything gets brittle, you may need to use a wrench to turn this. Well, this could easily snap off, and then you got yourself a much bigger problem. So I recommend going with something like this. It's a quarter turn. Like I said, only about $7-8. Pretty inexpensive. A standard valve like this, these are maybe $4 or $5, so it doesn't cost you much more. And a close-up of that valve, like we just put on. This one has a ball valve in it. There's your threads. We look inside of this thing, and you've got that ball valve inside there. And as that turns, it shuts it off. Makes it real simple. One thing you can do to make sure that these last the lifetime of your house is every so often when you're under your cabinet scrounging around for that last bottle of shampoo or something, just give it a twist. Shut it off for a second and then turn it back on. I mean, it takes 2 seconds. 1, 2. On, off. And back on. So, real simple to do. Don't need to hire yourself a $100 plumber. Replace that valve, turn your water supply back on, check for any leaks, and you're good to go. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.